In the peaceful town of Savannah, Georgia, 1979, a young and beloved firefighter vanished into thin air without a single trace, leaving behind a heartbroken community and unanswered questions. For over 3 decades, her mysterious disappearance haunted everyone who knew her, until a shocking discovery emerged from the depths of a forgotten swamp. Her fire truck, burned and abandoned, hidden beneath the mud for 33 years. What really happened on that fateful night? Where did she go, and why was her truck concealed for so long? In the gentle autumn of 1979, Savannah, Georgia, felt like a place lost in time. Cobblestone streets lined with towering oak trees draped elegantly in Spanish moss painted a charming backdrop for a community rooted in tradition and togetherness. Everyone knew their neighbors by name, greeted each other warmly, and shared life's simple pleasures and quiet sorrows. Among the familiar faces that illuminated Savannah, none shone brighter than Emma Hudson. At 26, Emma was more than just the town's cherished firefighter. She embodied hope, strength, and undeniable warmth. Her soft, chestnut brown hair fell gracefully just past her shoulders, framing green eyes that sparkled with empathy and courage. People often said her gentle smile alone could heal wounds deeper than fire could ever inflict. Yet behind her radiant demeanor lay a deeply emotional past. Emma lost her father, Daniel Hudson, when she was only 10 years old. A Vietnam veteran, Daniel returned from war decorated but scarred by experiences too painful to share. His untimely death left young Emma with a lasting void and a promise to fulfill. She wore his silver ring, engraved with the date he returned from Vietnam, twisting it gently whenever she felt uncertain or anxious, a subtle habit noticed by those closest to her. Emma's bond with her mother, Abigail Hudson, strengthened immeasurably after Daniel's passing. Abigail, a beloved history teacher at the local high school, poured every ounce of love into her daughter. Their relationship blossomed beautifully, built upon mutual understanding and unwavering support. Together, they carried Daniel's memory, close, each becoming the other's anchor. Driven by her father's legacy and inspired by his courage, Emma pursued firefighting, a bold choice for a woman in those times. Though she faced initial skepticism, her determination and skill soon erased any doubts. The fire department quickly became her second family, and Savannah embraced her proudly. Emma's days were filled with heartfelt interactions that bound her tightly to the community. Every morning she stopped by Annie's Bakery on River Street, always leaving with extra pastries to distribute to local children on her way to the fire station. Her simple acts of kindness became legendary in Savannah. Children adored her, elders cherished her visits, and even the most cynical residents found themselves smiling at her thoughtful gestures. The firehouse, nestled centrally in town, hummed with camaraderie. Emma's colleagues admired her unwavering bravery and quick thinking during emergencies. Among them stood Andrew "Andy" Colton, a reserved, soft-spoken firefighter with sandy blonde hair and quiet blue eyes. Andy rarely participated in the group's lively banter, preferring the solitude of the garage or the quiet corner of the briefing room. Although respected for his technical skills, Andy remained a distant figure, never quite fitting into the jovial atmosphere that Emma effortlessly commanded. On the evening of November 13, 1979, a harsh rainstorm enveloped Savannah, drenching the city in relentless sheets of rain. Emma, finishing her shift, planned a quiet dinner at home with her mother, Abigail. However, just as she grabbed her coat, the station alarm blared urgently, breaking the calm. A massive fire had erupted in the old, abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of town, along the Savannah River. Flames tore aggressively through the decaying structure, illuminating the dark sky with sinister red and orange hues visible for miles. The fire brigade swiftly assembled, and Emma, without hesitation, took the lead. Upon arrival, the team faced daunting circumstances. The roaring fire threatened to spread to neighboring structures. Emma quickly coordinated the firefighting efforts, displaying exceptional calm under immense pressure. Amid roaring flames and collapsing beams, she courageously guided her colleagues, her voice clear above the chaos. Even Andy, typically indifferent, watched her with undeniable admiration mixed with something deeper, unreadable, from a distance. Hours passed as the team battled the fierce inferno. By midnight, soaked by the relentless rain and sweat, they finally gained control. Exhausted but relieved, the firefighters gathered around the trucks, congratulating each other. But amidst the relief, something was wrong. Emma was nowhere to be found. Initially calm, the firefighters called her name, assuming she might have lingered to secure the perimeter. But the calls quickly turned desperate, voices filled with rising panic. Andy, his typically composed face now etched with worry, searched frantically alongside the others, his eyes betraying a deepening fear. As the realization of Emma's disappearance sank in, chaos erupted. Additional emergency services were dispatched immediately. Flashlights pierced through the relentless rain. Voices strained against the sound of the storm, echoing Emma's name through the night. Yet, the factory grounds revealed no clues, no helmet, no jacket, no signs at all. Emma Hudson had vanished completely. Word spread rapidly through Savannah. By early morning, the entire community, including Abigail, was at the scene, standing helplessly in the cold rain, their expressions marked by disbelief and mounting fear. Abigail Hudson clutched an old, cherished photograph tightly in her trembling hand. The image depicted Daniel in uniform, smiling warmly alongside a 10-year-old Emma, proudly holding a toy firefighter's helmet. Abigail's eyes, brimming with tears, searched desperately for comfort in the familiar faces around her, but found none. As dawn approached, the reality of Emma's disappearance settled painfully over Savannah. The beloved firefighter, the daughter they watched grow up, the woman who represented all that was kind and brave about their town, was gone without a trace. As the first pale rays of dawn broke over Savannah, the storm finally subsided, leaving behind only a haunting silence. The old textile factory, now charred ruins surrounded by yellow police tape, became the unsettling epicenter of confusion and fear. It was here, amidst smoldering embers and rain-soaked ashes, that the search for Emma Hudson began. Captain Jack Ellis, the seasoned detective assigned to lead the case, arrived at the site early that morning. Jack, at 48, had spent most of his career in Savannah. With graying hair, intense blue eyes, and a calm demeanor honed by years of handling sensitive cases, he inspired confidence in everyone around him. But beneath his composed exterior, Jack felt an overwhelming pressure. Emma wasn't just any missing person. She was Savannah's heart, and the city's eyes were fixed squarely on him. Immediately, Ellis coordinated a methodical search of the factory grounds, every inch examined by teams of police officers and volunteers. The heavy scent of smoke and wet wood lingered in the air, mingling with the palpable desperation of those searching for a clue. Any clue. Search dogs barked anxiously as their handlers guided them over debris and through muddy pools, yet nothing of significance emerged. Meanwhile, Savannah awoke to the devastating news. Within hours, streets filled with worried faces, whispers of disbelief echoed from cafes to corner stores. As Emma's disappearance settled into the community's consciousness, it was a collective shock, an almost unbearable ache that seemed to ripple across the entire town. By midday, Detective Ellis began interviewing Emma's colleagues at the fire station. Each firefighter sat quietly, shaken, recounting the events from the previous night. Jack carefully observed every expression, each voice trembling with sincere distress. He noted how even tough, seasoned firefighters fought tears when describing Emma, painting an emotional portrait of a woman whose absence left a void far deeper than he'd anticipated. Eventually, Andy Colton stepped into the interrogation room. Quiet and reserved as always, Andy seemed genuinely troubled. His blonde hair was damp, his blue eyes tired yet earnest. With measured calmness, he detailed how Emma led the team, recalling her precise instructions, bravery, and control under pressure. "I wish I'd kept my eyes on her," Andy murmured, his voice breaking slightly. "Maybe I could have done something." Jack studied Andy closely. He saw genuine remorse, even guilt, yet sensed nothing sinister, only profound sadness. Andy's innocence seemed undeniable, and the detective felt empathy for the quiet firefighter. Burdened by regret over something he couldn't control, as days turned into nights, the city's collective anxiety deepened. Hundreds joined organized searches through forests, riverbanks, and abandoned buildings. Citizens from all walks of life, teachers, store owners, students, moved in solemn lines, calling Emma's name into the fading daylight, their voices echoing into the growing darkness, returning only silence. Every evening, Abigail Hudson stood among them, her face pale, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. She moved mechanically, clutching tightly to Emma's childhood photograph, a beacon of unwavering hope. Neighbors quietly watched her, each heart aching profoundly, knowing words could offer no comfort sufficient for a mother's anguish. To honor Emma, candlelit vigils filled the town square nightly, creating a stunning sea of flickering lights illuminating tear-streaked faces. Children held drawings of their beloved firefighter, elders shared poignant memories, and prayers echoed softly into the night sky. Savannah united, bound tightly by grief yet desperately clinging to hope. One of these evenings, hidden among the somber crowd, stood a young Elliot Brooks. Only 13, with dark curly hair and inquisitive brown eyes, Elliot held an old notebook, carefully recording everything he witnessed. Deeply intrigued, he quietly absorbed every detail, the whispered rumors, the detective's stern demeanor, Abigail's quiet sorrow. For Elliot, Emma's disappearance wasn't just tragedy, it was a mystery demanding answers. Unbeknownst to him, this night marked the beginning of his lifelong obsession with the truth. Back at the police station, Detective Ellis grew increasingly frustrated. Despite relentless searches and countless interrogations, no solid leads materialized. Witnesses repeatedly expressed admiration and love for Emma, describing her flawless character, deepening the enigma of her vanishing. As the detective pored over evidence late into each night, sipping bitter coffee in frustration, his desperation for answers intensified. Jack also found himself revisiting Emma's past, searching for hidden clues. He spoke at length with Abigail, who shared heartfelt stories of Emma's childhood, her passion for firefighting, and the legacy of Daniel Hudson, whose heroic presence continued to influence his daughter. Jack listened carefully, hoping to detect any overlooked detail, but nothing emerged except a clearer image of Emma's pure-hearted dedication and kindness. Slowly, days stretched into a week without any progress. Newspapers published headlines questioning the police's competence, fueling tension within the community. Detective Ellis, facing mounting scrutiny and pressure, repeatedly reassured the public, though privately he began doubting his own capabilities. He knew Emma deserved better. Savannah deserved better. Then, a potential breakthrough appeared. A local fisherman reported seeing suspicious movement near the riverbank on the night Emma disappeared. Hope surged anew, sparking excitement among search teams. Detective Ellis quickly mobilized divers, boats, and ground units, meticulously combing the riverbanks. The community held its collective breath, expecting answers. But after exhaustive searches, the lid crumbled into another dead end. As frustration deepened, suspicion briefly shifted to transient strangers passing through town. Desperate for resolution, the community speculated wildly, rumors swirling like the currents of the Savannah River itself. Yet each theory evaporated, leaving only uncertainty behind. On the 7th night after Emma's disappearance, Savannah assembled once more in the town square, vigil candles illuminating weary faces. Detective Ellis stood reluctantly before them, microphone trembling slightly in his hand. The crowd hushed, sensing an impending announcement, hopeful yet fearful. Ellis took a slow breath, eyes scanning the crowd, recognizing familiar faces. Abigail Hudson stood near the front, gripping Emma's photograph tightly against her chest. Andy stood silently behind her, shoulders slumped, eyes lowered. Even young Elliot Brooks waited anxiously, pen ready, notebook trembling slightly in his hand. With heavy resignation, Detective Ellis finally spoke, voice steady but sorrowful. "We have exhausted every lead. We've searched tirelessly and interviewed everyone who knew Emma Hudson. Despite our best efforts, I must inform you tonight, we currently have no further clues to her whereabouts. At this moment, there is simply nothing more we can do." His words echoed painfully through the silent crowd, striking each heart with devastating clarity. Gasps and quiet sobs punctuated the air. Abigail collapsed into a chair provided by neighbors, quietly weeping into Emma's photo, while Andy silently turned away, tears falling unchecked. October 2012, more than 3 decades after Emma Hudson vanished, Savannah had moved forward yet never truly healed. Time had gently covered the wound, but beneath the quiet surface, the memory lingered like a restless spirit. It was a chilly autumn morning when 2 local hunters, Chris Miller and Paul Davis, moved quietly through the dense wilderness surrounding Blackwater Marsh, an isolated swamp at the city's outskirts. Fog hovered thickly over dark waters, and twisted branches clawed ominously toward the sky. They walked cautiously, rifles slung loosely over their shoulders, their breaths visible in the crisp air. As they navigated deeper into the swamp, Chris stopped abruptly, narrowing his eyes toward a silhouette partially hidden beneath a thick tangle of reeds and moss-covered trees. "Paul, look over there. What's that?" Curiosity piqued, they approached slowly, boots sinking into soft mud. Their hearts quickened as they recognized the rusted, charred shape of an old fire engine, partially submerged and eerily concealed by nature's grasp. The fading letters spelling Savannah Fire Department were barely visible beneath corrosion. Chris whispered breathlessly, "My God, Paul... ISN, single quotes, this the truck from the Hudson disappearance?" Hours later, Savannah police arrived, turning the quiet marsh into a bustling scene of urgency. Crime scene tape snapped crisply in the cool breeze as technicians carefully documented every detail. News spread rapidly, and soon, curious residents and journalists gathered at the marsh's edge, murmuring anxiously. Amid the organized chaos stood Detective Laura Bennett, a fiercely dedicated investigator newly transferred to Savannah's cold case unit. Laura, in her mid-30s, was tall and slender, her dark hair pulled tightly into a professional ponytail. Intense brown eyes concealed years of grief and resolve. Laura had returned to her hometown for personal reasons. Her father, Michael Bennett, a beloved Savannah police officer, had been mysteriously killed when Laura was only 15. The unresolved nature of his death fueled her relentless pursuit of justice. Laura moved deliberately around the site, absorbing each detail. Approaching the fire truck, she carefully observed its deteriorated condition, partly burned, half submerged in mud, its windows shattered, metal twisted grotesquely. It felt like gazing upon a ghostly monument of past tragedy. "What exactly are we dealing with?" Laura asked softly, addressing Officer Sam Nolan, a seasoned policeman who remembered the original case vividly. Nolan sighed heavily. "Detective, this is Emma Hudson's truck. Vanished in '79, never found until today. People spent decades wondering about it." Laura nodded thoughtfully. Her intuition stirred deeply, sensing this discovery would resurrect memories many wished forgotten. That evening, under glaring floodlights, a crane slowly lifted the truck from its watery grave. The operation was tense, each groan and creak amplified by anxious silence. As mud and water drained, fragments of rusted equipment clattered onto plastic tarps spread below, technicians meticulously sifting through every bit of debris. Laura watched intently, heart pounding quietly with anticipation. Suddenly, a forensic officer called sharply, "Detective Bennett, you might want to see this." Laura stepped closer. The officer carefully cleaned an object encrusted with thick mud, revealing the faint gleam of silver. It was an old ring, engraved with a date. Laura felt her breath catch sharply. That night, Laura sat alone at the precinct, the ring carefully sealed in evidence before her. She'd read extensively about Emma's case, knew intimately the significance of the ring. Emma's father's ring, the cherished memento Emma had worn constantly. Laura shivered, feeling a painful empathy, a young woman forever haunted by loss. Not unlike herself. Determined, Laura immediately reopened the case. She spent sleepless nights poring over old records, speaking with elderly witnesses whose memories brought tears and unresolved anguish. Abigail Hudson, now frail but still strong-spirited, welcomed Lavra into her modest home. The walls covered with family photographs, each filled with smiling memories frozen in time. "You remind me of her," Abigail remarked softly, her gentle eyes glistening. Lavra felt profoundly moved. Abigail shared details she'd repeated countless times before, yet Lavra listened intently, searching between words, hoping to uncover previously overlooked details. Days turned intense as Lavra interviewed retired firefighters. Some recounted the harrowing events of that rainy night, vividly recalling Emma's leadership and bravery. Others struggled, memories clouded by grief and age. Among them was Andy Colton, now retired, living quietly alone on the outskirts of town. Andy appeared fragile, yet cooperative, his voice tinged with sincere sadness. He recounted that night clearly, emphasizing Emma's heroism. Lavra felt an uneasy sensation, but Andy's weary eyes seemed transparent, sincere. She mentally noted to revisit Andy later, sensing there might be deeper layers hidden beneath his gentle demeanor. Media attention around the rediscovered fire truck intensified rapidly. Lavra managed press conferences firmly, emphasizing caution as the investigation proceeded. Each night, however, she privately grappled with pressure and lingering frustration. The most poignant moment came several days later. Lavra requested Abigail's presence at the precinct to officially identify the recovered ring. Abigail arrived trembling slightly, accompanied by close friends. Lavra escorted her gently into the quiet room, placing the carefully preserved silver ring before her. Abigail reached slowly, fingers shaking as she held the ring close, eyes filling instantly with tears. Her breath came sharply, chest heaving softly as decades of sorrow, hope, and pain surged vividly. Lavra quietly observed Abigail's profound reaction, deeply moved by her unwavering strength. "Yes," Abigail whispered finally, voice breaking emotionally. This is Daniel's ring. Emma never took it off. It was her promise to him." She paused, looking at Lavra intensely. "This proves my Emma was there." Lavra nodded solemnly, acknowledging the gravity of this emotional revelation. Abigail, overwhelmed, wept quietly, clutching the ring tightly to her heart. Her sobs filled the room, echoing softly in Laura's heart, fueling her resolve even further. As news spread of Abigail's confirmation, Savannah once again plunged into collective turmoil. Old wounds reopened, debates ignited, theories circulated. Wildly, Lavra, deeply affected yet focused, knew the significance of this evidence. She felt Emma's presence vividly now, as if silently pleading from beyond, urging her to uncover the hidden truth. Late that night, sitting alone in the precinct beneath the harsh glow of desk lamps, Lavra carefully reviewed her notes, connecting dots, searching tirelessly for overlooked details. Her father's unresolved murder echoed painfully in her mind, reinforcing her determination not to let Emma's story end. Similarly, Savannah, once again deeply stirred, awaited anxiously as secrets long buried resurfaced, demanding resolution. The resurrected past was now fully alive, pushing relentlessly toward revelations no one could anticipate, and truths that threatened to alter everything they believed they knew about that unforgettable night in 1979. The discovery of Emma Hudson's ring in Blackwater Marsh sent shockwaves throughout Savannah, opening old wounds and raising unsettling new questions. For Detective Laura Bennett, the investigation had become deeply personal. Every sleepless night spent poring over evidence, every visit to Abigail Hudson's grief-shadowed home, strengthened Laura's resolve to uncover the full truth, no matter how hidden or painful. In the days following the emotional identification of Emma's ring, Laura was approached by Elliot Brooks, the investigative journalist whose fascination with Emma's case began as a young boy decades earlier. Now 46, Elliot had grown into a dedicated and insightful reporter, still carrying the same curious intensity that had marked his youth. He'd followed the case meticulously, archiving every lid, every dead end, in stacks of worn notebooks. Elliot requested to meet Laura at a quiet cafe near River Street. Over steaming cups of coffee, Elliot opened an old notebook, yellowed with age. Flipping carefully through the pages, "I've kept every detail, every whisper," Elliot began quietly. But something always felt unfinished. Laura leaned in, intrigued. She respected Elliot's reputation for thoroughness. "Do you have anything concrete?" "Not yet," Elliot admitted. "But I found something odd in the old records at City Hall. There were internal complaints, anonymous letters, hinting at tension within the fire department right around Emma's disappearance. They were never thoroughly investigated." Laura's curiosity intensified. "Internal tension? What kind?" "Unclear, but they mentioned conflicts and jealousy, vague accusations. And the chief at the time, Edward Shaw, seemed to have dismissed them. Shaw passed away 8 years ago, but his house still stands empty. Maybe there's more hidden there?" Laura agreed it was worth exploring. Early the next morning, armed with a search warrant, Laura and Elliot approached the old Shaw residence, a neglected brick house shaded beneath sprawling oaks, ivy climbing its weathered walls. The interior smelled faintly of dust and abandonment. Carefully, they combed through stacks of files Shaw had stored in a cluttered basement office. The air grew heavy as hours passed without significant findings, until Elliot's voice broke the silence urgently. "Laura, look at this." He handed her a torn photograph, faded and brittle. Emma was unmistakable, her eyes flashing in rare anger as she faced another firefighter, Andy Colton. Andy's expression appeared equally heated, his face distorted by frustration or anger. The torn image, captured days before Emma vanished, resonated sharply. Laura stared, heart racing. They argued, why wasn't this ever mentioned? Elliot shook his head. Maybe someone didn't want it known. Their suspicions heightened. Laura meticulously analyzed every file. Reports hinted discreetly at Andy's difficult relationships. Within the department, resentment toward Emma, emotional instability. None of this matched the gentleman Laura recently interviewed. The discrepancy troubled her deeply. Laura arranged another careful meeting with Andy, this time accompanied subtly by Elliot. They found Andy tending a small vegetable garden behind his modest home. Andy greeted them politely, seeming genuinely pleased by the visit. Yet Laura sensed hidden anxiety beneath his calm exterior. Casually, Elliot mentioned the discovered photograph. Andy visibly stiffened, eyes flickering briefly, betraying surprise. Recovering quickly, he spoke quietly. "Emma and I argued occasionally, but it was harmless. I respected her deeply." Laura gently pressed, "What caused those arguments?" "Andy?" He hesitated, choosing words carefully. "I suppose I envied her popularity sometimes. She was special to everyone. Maybe I wanted to be special too. But I swear it was never hateful." Andy's sincerity felt genuine, yet subtle doubt lingered. They left with more questions than answers. Laura and Elliot continued tirelessly. Interviews with other former firefighters revealed subtler hints of departmental jealousy. Emma's popularity, courage, and compassion seemed to quietly alienate some colleagues, particularly Andy. Still, no explicit evidence surfaced, only veiled suggestions, innuendo, and lingering doubts. Late one evening, Laura and Elliot reconvened. Frustration evident on both their faces. "I feel like we're circling something big but can't quite grasp it," Laura admitted, sighing deeply. Elliot nodded thoughtfully, pacing the cramped precinct office. "Everyone seems protective of Andy, yet something doesn't feel right. Why tear the photo, hide the complaints? It feels deliberate." Laura pondered silently. She recalled Andy's garden, the quiet simplicity of his life now. Could jealousy truly push someone that far? "Let's dig deeper," Laura finally said, determination reignited. "Review every incident involving Andy, every minor conflict, every call he responded to." "Somewhere there's a detail we've overlooked," Elliot agreed readily. They spent the next days immersed in records, piecing together Andy's past meticulously. Slowly, patterns emerged. Andy often requested assignments alongside Emma, despite conflicts. Yet nothing conclusively pointed to wrongdoing. During another emotional visit with Abigail Hudson, Laura mentioned carefully, Did Emma ever discuss tension at work, specifically involving Andy Colton? Abigail paused, eyes reflective. Emma rarely complained. But once, shortly before she disappeared, she seemed troubled. Said Andy acted strangely, distant yet always watching her. At the time, it felt insignificant, but now ... Her voice trailed painfully, eyes filling softly with regret. Lavra comforted Abigail gently, knowing the painful memories resurfaced deeply wounded her. Returning to the precinct, Laura's frustration deepened into anxiety. The case felt personal, an echo of her unresolved grief regarding her own father's unsolved murder. Determined, she couldn't let Emma's case fade into unresolved shadows. One afternoon, Elliot brought another intriguing detail. Lavra, an elderly neighbor, remembered Andy arguing with Emma near the station shortly before the disappearance. She'd never reported it before, assuming it unimportant. Laura's pulse quickened. Why the secrecy? Why hide these confrontations? Elliot shook his head thoughtfully. Fear of implicating someone well-liked, misplaced loyalty, or something more sinister. Lavra considered this carefully. We need to speak with Andy again more directly, perhaps challenge him slightly. Elliot hesitated, careful. If he's innocent, it could push him away. If guilty, it might alarm him prematurely. She sighed deeply, acknowledging his caution. Then we tread softly but decisively. One misstep and we lose our chance for truth. Agreeing, they resolved to plan meticulously, quietly preparing deeper inquiries into Andy's history, connections, and movements surrounding Emma's disappearance. Both knew the stakes, the emotional weight of decades, a community's longing for closure, Abigail's quiet suffering, and their own burning need for answers. As days passed, Andy Colton felt a relentless pressure closing in around him. Detective Lavra Bennett's frequent visits, gentle but probing questions, and Elliot Brooks' persistent inquiries had turned his quiet life into an exhausting ordeal. Andy had spent decades quietly hidden behind the veil of a gentle neighbor, a retired firefighter who raised vegetables in his garden, exchanging polite smiles with neighbors, never causing trouble. Yet now, whispers trailed him everywhere he went, eyes turned suspicious. Questioning inside his modest home, shadows lingered longer than usual. Every creak of the wooden floorboards beneath his feet seemed louder, every knock at the door jolted his nerves. Andy struggled to maintain composure, his mind unraveling beneath memories he had desperately tried to bury. In moments of solitude, flashbacks tormented him. Memories from his youth surfaced vividly, schoolyards filled with laughter, none of it for him. Andy had always been the invisible boy, lonely and awkward, standing outside social circles. Rejected constantly, never invited, never chosen. Emma's arrival at the fire station years later had painfully mirrored those schoolyard rejections. Her effortless charm, her beauty and kindness unintentionally mocked his invisibility, igniting hidden envy that festered silently into resentment. One rainy afternoon, Elliot Brooks knocked unexpectedly on Andy's door, requesting one more quick conversation. Andy, reluctant yet determined not to raise further suspicion, invited him inside. Elliot, ever observant, subtly scanned the surroundings, noticing how sparse and orderly everything appeared, almost obsessively clean, while Andy excused himself. Briefly, Elliot's eyes wandered curiously around the room. His gaze paused on an old wooden cabinet, slightly ajar, revealing odd items neatly arranged on its shelves. Curious, Elliot moved closer, carefully pulling open the cabinet door further. His pulse quickened. Inside were peculiar objects, a partially melted badge from a firefighter's uniform, a burned glove, and charred fragments from different fire scenes, carefully preserved. Startled, Elliot quickly stepped back as Andy returned. Andy's eyes followed Elliot's nervous glance, instantly realizing his secret had been exposed. A silent tension filled the air, thick and suffocating. Elliot calmly but firmly questioned, "Andy, what are these things?" Andy's breathing quickened, panic flickering briefly across his eyes before being replaced by forced calm. "Just memories from my career," he muttered weakly, voice shaking. But Elliot sensed deeper significance. He left shortly thereafter, promptly alerting Laura about the troubling discovery. That evening, Detective Bennett and Elliot returned officially, this time with backup officers and a warrant. Andy's composure shattered visibly when confronted. By the search, his protests growing weaker as evidence mounted. Laura and Elliot exchanged meaningful looks, knowing they'd reached a critical turning point. In a sterile interrogation room downtown, Andy sat across from Laura, his face pale, shoulders slumped, hands trembling. Laura spoke gently but relentlessly, her voice steady, compassionate, yet unyielding. "Andy, we know about your hidden keepsakes. You've carried this burden too long. It's time you tell us what happened that night in 1979. Andy's eyes filled slowly, desperately avoiding hers. His body shook visibly under intense pressure. Memories surged painfully, vividly, the night he had finally confronted Emma after months of silent resentment. He recalled how his jealousy had exploded into rage, his sense of inadequacy fueling uncontrollable anger. Laura watched quietly, patiently, allowing silence to amplify pressure, a strategy learned from years of interrogations. Andy's breathing quickened painfully, his psychological walls crumbling visibly under the relentless weight of truth. It wasn't supposed to go so far, Andy whispered finally, voice breaking. Laura leaned in closer, urging gently, "Tell me what happened, Andy." His voice trembled as he confessed, "I argued with her. Emma always had everything: popularity, respect, admiration. I just wanted her to understand how it felt being invisible, unwanted. That night at the fire... It was supposed to scare her, nothing more. But things spiraled. She confronted me angrily. We argued bitterly. I panicked." Andy's shoulders heaved emotionally as Laura urged gently, "What did you do, Andy?" Through painful sobs, the truth poured forth. "I sabotaged the truck after the fire, drove Emma to an isolated place outside town. She pleaded with me, confused and frightened, but I couldn't stop. By then, it was beyond my control." Laura's heart raced, dread building within her. "Where did you take her?" Andy swallowed hard, voice shaking violently. "They were waiting... wealthy men from outside Savannah. Powerful, dangerous people. I'd met them through a secret contact, someone connected, influential. They wanted Emma. They paid me to deliver her. I told myself it was justice, that she would finally understand isolation. I didn't realize the monster I'd become." Laura struggled to conceal her shock, sensing Elliot's silent disbelief. Behind the observation mirror, "Andy, are you telling me you sold Emma Hudson?" Andy nodded painfully, eyes haunted. "They took her away to a private island somewhere in the Caribbean. I never heard from her again. Afterward, I burned and abandoned the truck to erase evidence. The swamp hid it well until now." The horrifying truth filled Laura with revulsion and disbelief. Andy's jealousy had festered into unimaginable darkness, destroying countless lives. Emma had been betrayed profoundly, her kindness repaid with devastating cruelty. Emotionally shattered, Andy continued desperately, "I've lived with unbearable guilt for decades, seeing her face every night in dreams, hearing her pleading voice. I've carried this secret far too long. Emma deserved better... so much better." Laura felt a surge of anger and compassion intertwining strangely. "Andy, who were these men? Can you identify them?" Andy shook his head miserably. "Only one, a contact named Mitchell. They threatened my life if I ever spoke. I was afraid. For years, fear silenced me." Laura sighed deeply, exhausted emotionally by the revelations, yet steeling herself for the difficult path ahead. Justice demanded courage now more than ever. Andy slumped forward, sobbing deeply, overwhelmed completely by decades of hidden guilt and fear finally surfacing. Laura watched silently, her heart heavy with profound sadness. Justice would not heal the past entirely, but at least truth offered closure, a chance to reclaim dignity and peace stolen decades ago. Outside the interrogation room, Elliot waited. Anxiously, eyes wide with shock, his notebook momentarily forgotten. Lavra emerged, visibly shaken, eyes reflecting deep turmoil. "You heard everything?" Lavra asked softly. Elliot nodded slowly, voice filled with disbelief. "It's worse than we ever imagined. This goes beyond Savannah, beyond anything we anticipated." Lavra breathed deeply, voice steadying with determination. "We need to move carefully now. Emma deserves justice. Abigail deserves answers. Savannah deserves the full truth, however painful." "We're not finished yet." Elliot nodded firmly, realizing their investigation had just entered deeper, darker waters. Both knew the coming days would reveal truths even more harrowing. Yet, neither could predict precisely how devastating those revelations would become. The revelations spilled forth by Andy Colton had shattered the peaceful facade of Savannah, leaving its citizens stunned, heartbroken, yet desperately hopeful. Detective Lavra Bennett, burdened with heavy truths, knew time was now her greatest enemy. Andy's confession had opened a door into a dark world of secrecy and corruption, and Lavra refused to let the opportunity for justice slip away again. Over several tense weeks, Lavra meticulously coordinated with international authorities, tracing connections linked to the elusive figure known only as Mitchell. Painstakingly, they uncovered the existence of a secret, privately owned Caribbean island called Isla Perdida, a place deliberately omitted from maps, owned by influential millionaires and shielded by layers of bureaucracy and bribery. Finally, on a humid night, Lavra stood aboard a military boat approaching Isla Perdida. She gripped the railing firmly, heart pounding as waves crashed gently beneath a starlit sky. Around her, heavily armed officers quietly prepared, faces tense and alert, aware of the gravity of their mission. Beside Lara stood Elliot Brooks, granted special permission to witness the culmination of decades of searching. His presence brought her quiet strength. As the island appeared, a dark silhouette looming ominously, Laura steadied her breath, knowing this moment would define her career, perhaps even her life. Isla Perdida was encircled by rocky cliffs, dense jungles obscuring its interior. The island looked both beautiful and sinister, the perfect prison hidden in plain sight. Once ashore, they moved silently through thick foliage, the air heavy with humidity and anticipation. Spotlights from distant guard towers sliced through the darkness, creating pools of harsh white light that Laura's team carefully avoided. Her heart pounded louder with each careful step, adrenaline heightening her senses. At the island's center lay a large, secluded villa, a luxurious yet sinister structure, its facade illuminated by dim lights. As Laura's team encircled the compound, quiet signals passed between them. The coordinated strike began swiftly, silently, officers overpowering guards before alarms could sound. But soon, chaos erupted as remaining security personnel fought back fiercely. Gunfire and shouts shattered the island's deceptive peace. Lavra rushed forward, heart racing wildly, determined to locate Emma amidst the confusion. Elliot followed, close behind, documenting everything meticulously. Inside the villa, Lavra encountered lavish rooms filled with frightened staff, none matching Emma's description. Frustration mounted until she reached a narrow stairway leading to the lower levels. Descending quickly, she discovered a hidden wing, a long corridor lined with small rooms, more resembling prison cells than accommodations. Laura's pulse quickened as she opened door after door, each revealing frightened, aging faces, women whose eyes reflected years of hidden pain and endurance. Finally, at the corridor's end, she opened the last door. Inside stood a slender woman, nearly 60, her hair now gray, yet unmistakably Emma Hudson. Despite decades of hardship, Emma's eyes still carried an undeniable strength, resilience, and quiet dignity. Her face, lined from years of quiet suffering, lit up cautiously as Lavra softly said, "Emma?" Emma stared for a moment, disbelief melting into overwhelming relief. "You finally found me," she whispered, tears spilling. Softly, voice heavy with years of waiting. Lavra, deeply moved, approached carefully, extending a comforting hand. "We never stopped searching, Emma. Savannah never forgot you." Emma smiled faintly, fragile but determined. "I knew someone would come someday." Outside, the island had fallen into the authorities' control. Millionaire owners and their guards were subdued, arrested swiftly, their powerful networks unable to protect them this time. Elliot captured images meticulously, ensuring this truth would reach the world, destroying their anonymity forever. Returning home, Savannah prepared emotionally for Emma's arrival. Crowds gathered quietly, faces marked by hopeful anticipation and profound respect. Abigail Hudson, frail yet fiercely determined, waited anxiously at the airport, her aged hands trembling softly as Emma emerged from the plane. Their reunion unfolded gently yet powerfully, mother and daughter embracing. Tearfully, decades of longing, grief, and love expressed without words. The gathered crowd watched reverently, tears filling many eyes, Savannah's collective heart healing visibly as Emma, at last, stepped onto familiar ground, home at last. In the days following, Emma's story dominated headlines worldwide, becoming an international symbol of resilience, survival, and strength. The millionaire owners faced public outrage and severe sentences, their web of influence destroyed. Andy, serving life imprisonment, offered apologies never fully capable of healing inflicted wounds. Emma, supported lovingly by Abigail, Lavra, and the community, slowly rebuilt her life. Though haunted by lost decades, she refused bitterness, choosing instead quiet strength and compassion. She spoke publicly only once, thanking Savannah warmly for never abandoning hope, urging resilience, forgiveness, and unity, her powerful message resonating deeply with millions worldwide. Lavra Bennett, honored publicly for her tireless dedication, felt profound peace. Emma's case, finally resolved, brought personal solace, mirroring closure she longed for. Concerning her father's unsolved death, Elliot Brooks published detailed accounts that captured global attention, elevating awareness of human trafficking, ensuring Emma's tragedy would inspire meaningful change. Months passed gently. Savannah gradually reclaimed normalcy, yet Emma's presence profoundly reshaped its soul. The town remembered vividly, forever marked by her bravery, sacrifice, and resilience. Her courage transformed Savannah's pain into strength, sorrow into unity. Years later, Emma quietly tended her garden, a tranquil morning interrupted gently by Laura's unexpected visit. Sharing tea, they reflected softly on everything endured. Emma smiled gently, eyes distant yet peaceful. "I often wondered why this happened, why me? Perhaps to teach resilience, remind others never to surrender hope." Laura nodded thoughtfully. "Deeply moved, your strength inspired us all. Savannah became stronger because of you." Emma squeezed Laura's hand gently. "I found peace because you refused to quit, Lavra. You brought me home." Their bond, forged through tragedy and perseverance, quietly defined Savannah's spirit, unbreakable, compassionate, courageous,